evening. My name is Christopher Balzano,
And I'm Deanna Mulhern.
and welcome to Tripping on Legends. I don't think this has an episode name because
You said
it's
Lost
kind of
Mary or
well,
something.
it's a bonus episode, so it doesn't have a number. But we're calling
I'm
this
so obsessed with numbers.
"I Am" because that's what tells you. That's what separates the us from the wild, crazy people.
Maybe it's the
It's just a
opposite.
bonus episode,
Okay.
and it's the sad story of Little Mary.
Mm-hmm.
I debated for a long time whether or not to do this episode and how to do it
Why is that?
because we're talking about the real life story behind a legend that we tripped.
Isn't that what we
and-
always do?
Well, I mean, okay, before we get into that, let's talk about how to get in touch with us.
Yes.
Because there are, between now and Halloween, I've already got scheduled about 20 different events. And people are always saying, how can we, yes, exactly, bonus content. How can we get in touch with you? How can we follow what you're doing? I should feel like I should put some kind of schedule. But the best way is to get in touch with us on social media. You're going to want to, after this episode, if you're listening to this episode, whether it's now or whether it's on podcast, you can get the podcast wherever you get your podcast, Google Play or iTunes. You're going to want to maybe see some of the people because I feel like I should post the real life pictures.
Okay.
And I've created the real life pictures. I'll show you kind of as we go. No, is that an issue?
How do you know it's definitely her?
We'll talk about it. We'll definitely get into that. The best way to get in touch with us is facebook.com/trippingonlegends. The Instagram is Spooky Tripping. Twitter, because we're still on Twitter, is Spooky Balzano. And of course, you can go to www.trippingonlegends.com. I'm hoping maybe over the summer to change the way the website runs, so it's more of a website and less of a blog.
Okay.
Just because you've been pressuring me to put out merch, and other people have been like, "Well, you should do a Patreon. You should do a virtual tip jar. These other ways of bringing in cash to help fund what you do."
T-shirts.
Forget about the T-shirts. No one wants to wear a Tripping on Legends T-shirt.
I do.
But I feel like maybe if I set up the website differently and people can go like to different pages and
tell us that
and
you want a
stuff.
T-shirt.
But the blog, I'm not sure. There's a part of me that feels the blog format that I have it in right now has kind of played itself out. So
Yeah.
having free time over the summer, I might be changing that up. You can still go to
You have to
www.trippingonlegends.com. I am on TikTok.
Blogs are over.
I'm on TikTok and Tripping on Legends too. So hoping to get some really good TikTok. One of the ideas I had, tell me if you like this. There are, in addition to the legends that make up the Ocala, which the new book is on sale. It's already sold a ton of copies at
Where
the
is
events
it?
that I've been
I
in.
want to hold it up.
You know, the funny thing is it was right here. It's right over there. Underneath the TV. Like in the bookcase. But I wanted to, there was so much that I had to leave out of the book because I didn't feel like it was properly covered. That, okay, go ahead, show it. There you go. Haunted Ocala National Forest, which it's getting pretty good reception so far. But there are a lot of stories in there that I didn't get to cover or I didn't want to, and I felt like I should do like an entire TikTok thing of just 1 minute myths covering the stories that I didn't do
Yes.
in the
I
actual
like
book.
this idea.
Because, and I also have a feeling, and I can just tell this from going to I was at the Southwest Florida Bigfoot Conference, that when the book hits, people are going to be contacting me with their versions of stories. And to tell me, you missed this, you missed this, you missed this. And so I feel like, this would be a really good, I like the fact you found the cushion. Those are my students' reading cushions.
I know. I didn't know it was so little.
Well, that's what she said. Anyway,
I don't
moving on.
judge size.
You already made fun of me because of numbers, so what are you going to do? So, tons of ways of getting in touch with us. I've got a ton of events coming up. The one I really want to promote right now, really quickly, is the Astor event.
Astor.
I've got another one at Spring Hill, which is also going to be kind of similar, but the one at Astor is the launch. So if you've gotten an invitation, if you haven't gotten an invitation because you're not following us on Facebook, It's going to be a blast. We're starting off at 11 o'clock in the morning. We're going to be talking Haunted Ocala. We're going to be talking stories of Silver Springs, which you don't even know a lot of the Silver Springs stories.
No.
It's pre-Deanna.
Very exciting.
But also, we're going to be watching Creature from the Black Lagoon, which was filmed in the Ocala.
What?
It was what? Why are you saying that like with a surprise? Like I didn't know that. But also,
no, that's exciting that you're doing all of this.
But also, we're going to be having. Could you do me a favor? Can you move that knob over a little bit?
Yes.
We're also going to be having games. There's going to be food. There's going to be popcorn. There's going to be me talking. There's going to be a movie. They're going to bring some vendors. Is it not moving? Is there something up with it that's not?
Not like clicking. Oh, you're so good.
Not really, because it just shot it way over there. There we go. All right, that's good enough.
Good.
But also, where we just talked about, we want to have a Halloween costume party, like a Halloween, like a prize for best costume. So people can actually.
You went from talking about Aster to.
This is the same Aster. No, like we're gonna have like a costume party, Halloween in June at the Aster thing. So now you have to think of what Halloween
Oh
costume.
my gosh, I love that because it's exactly 6 months away.
Get what I'm saying?
It's like half point to Halloween.
It's really not, but
Almost.
it's close enough. It's definitely.
No, it's not.
I wasn't gonna stress about your math. But it's definitely gonna be like a Halloween in June.
Costume?
You don't have to, but if you want to win a prize, no, of course not. I am me. I'm going as the puck wedgie guy. So
I just found this out.
Most people don't know about it. That's why I'm kind of splitting and sharing it. I created the event officially and I put it out there to people, so it's out there in the in the ether, the Aster ether. But we're going to be talking some more details about it and stuff like that. But it's definitely going to be a fun event where we're going to be doing a lot of things. So if you are in Southwest Florida, what do you mean? What is it? I just said what it was.
No. You said it's an Aster, but what is it? It's not like the Bigfoot conference. What is it?
It's me. It's a launch party. We call it.
Just.
It's called Aster's Creature Double Feature. One creature is a creature from the Black Lagoon. The other one is me.
Wow.
Get it?
Is it a library?
Yep, it's in the library, the Aster Library. And for some select people, you're going to be able to stay past the event, come back, and actually investigate what is an extremely active haunting at the library. So it's going to be a really fun night. It's going to be a really fun day, and it's going to be a really cool celebration of all the weirdness that is Aster, as well as the Ocala. So I think it's going to be a really fun time.
I'm very excited.
You should go. Okay. Now that all the business is out of the way, let's get to the actual story. Episode 109, episode 111.
111.
No, both.
Well, 109 was like you talked
so
about. 111 is when
we did an episode. The first episode you were not involved in was this little old me. Talked about mainly the Screaming Man and also what might have made the Screaming Man. So we talked a lot about how all the graves in that area, they were disturbed, and the Native American graves were disturbed, and that would be a really good reason for the Screaming Man. And then in that episode, I didn't even get to the actual legend trip, which was trying to have a conversation with Little Mary. Little Mary is the second ghost that is legendary, if you will, in the Boca Raton Cemetery. We had a random weekend where we could both go. And so, somewhat spontaneously, we packed up everything and we went to the cemetery. You were completely unprepared, except for what I told you on the road.
Just how you like it.
Just how I like it. No, I actually don't. You always say that.
You never prepare me.
If you were here on every episode, if you came to every episode, then you would say.
Told me
if
about
you
what's
listen
gonna
to
happen
the
in
episodes,
Aster.
if you
you just told me. As you tell them, you tell me. You like
yeah,
to
that's
unprepared.
yeah.
You
That
want to see
I like.
my reaction.
That I like the reactions during the show, but not
questions.
I want you well prepared when we go.
No, you don't.
Regardless of what you think. We did the cemetery, we did the Witch's Wall, which was you need to listen to the episode. Have you listened to that episode, the way they cut the audio together?
I did.
Did you like the way I edited it up?
Why did the audio get... Did it really get cut, or you didn't like what we were saying?
No, it got cut out.
Why?
I don't know. We'll leave that up to people's imaginations why we lost that little bit of audio, but we did.
Do you have a speculation on like what we were saying and why it got cut out or anything?
I don't remember off the top of my head what it
No,
was.
no.
Yeah, but we legend tripped Little Mary. Can you tell me what you remember of Little Mary? Just so it's not me doing all the talking. Tell me the legend of Little Mary, and then who you thought it was, if you remember.
Okay, so the legend of Mary.
For those who haven't listened to the episode,
Chris has been adding Little Mary for some reason.
that's what's described as Little Mary. It's the legend of Little Mary.
Okay. Why is it Little Mary? You weren't saying that before. Do we have to look at the notes from the trip?
Yeah, we can look at the note right
It
here.
does not say Little Mary.
It says right there, Little Mary.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the legend of Little Mary is, Chris is right. What is that? So when people come to is it the Boca Raton Cemetery?
Boca
Is that the
Raton
name?
Cemetery, yeah.
When they come to the cemetery, there's lots of benches. Speaking about benches, whoa!
I know. Hashtag follow the bench.
We're sitting on the bench. I have a bench. There's benches. Anyway, Little Mary comes to comfort them, and she has a maroon dress on. She's probably a teenager, and she comforts people that are sad. And so we went to Boca Raton Cemetery. It's all old people. Like,
It is.
Everyone's like
It is.
190.
And I
There's
think that's
a
an
lot of
important.
Marys.
That's an important part of this.
It's all couples.
Because we were working primarily from the work of Dr. David Jenkins. I can't remember what his first name is, but it's Dr. Jenkins, who has published a bunch of books about folklore, ghostly folklore of Florida. Kind of sketchy in places in that I've been able to kind of follow in his footsteps a little bit, and once again, he's another folklorist like Charlie Carlson, who has passed, so I can't follow up with a lot of this stuff with him.
Did he write a book?
He's written 4 of them. He wrote. They're all they're all Florida folklore, and then one is Central Florida, one's North Florida, one's the Gulf Coast. He does it kind of like that. He defines her as Little Mary. And I was rereading his sections on it, and he says he named her Mary. He named this ghost, which is seen. Now, it's really weird because I felt like the way that it was written originally, and I re-looked at it, that the way that it's written, because words count and word order counts, that she is seen on the benches.
Okay.
When I reread it, it was much more clear that other people are on the benches and they see her.
That's what I thought.
Because we kept wondering whether or not it was like,
Isn't
well,
that
how are
why
they
we
seeing
were
her?
sitting on the bench?
Why is there no good description of her? If it's so famous, like, why is there no physical description of what she looks like other than to
The
say
maroon dress?
a young girl in a maroon dress with white sleeves,
Okay.
right? And that maroon dress is actually not seen all that often. Because we spent a lot of time on episode 111 talking about the maroon dress and why you would wear that dress.
Yeah, why would you
right?
wear a
Like,
maroon dress?
right.
Yeah.
And there's only one incident where she's wearing that dress. Why was there no physical description? If so many people have seen her, why don't they have like a physical description of her other than to say a young teenage girl?
What else do you want?
What color is her hair? How tall is she? Is she
She's
dark
all like
skinned? Is
wispy,
she?
ghost looking.
It doesn't say anything about her being wispy ghost looking.
That's what you assume.
What happens is in the when it comes to when
There is a
ambiguity
point. Go ahead.
is part of the story, then it's allowed to become more of a legend. It's more acceptable because you put your own shit onto it. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like, so I kept seeing like I kept seeing like a 9-year-old girl in my head, a 9-year-old girl with like golden brown hair, in this puffy little maroon dress running
Like
around.
Goldilocks?
Like Goldilocks. There you go. Like Goldilocks, right? Only maybe a little bit darker. When in reality, that's really not what's physically described, because he said, because when we went there, we became obsessed with Where's Mary, right?
Yes.
And then about halfway
There's
through,
a lot of Marys.
we stopped looking for Mary, and we spent more time looking for age.
Younger girl, yeah.
Because we're like, well, why Mary? Like, there's nothing that says like a psychic
It's like
came
the Jane
and
Doe
like,
of the...
right.
Yeah.
And so, when I reread it, I read it closely, and it says he named her Mary because he found in the mausoleum the tomb, and it's described as a tomb, right? The
Okay.
tomb of a 13-year-old girl named Mary.
Okay. So this isn't the twin sister Mary.
How long did we spend in that cemetery?
The West Wing? Or
Just
any
that
other-
whole mausoleum. How much time did we spend on the mausoleum looking for Marys?
That hallway?
And looking for 13-year-olds.
Hours.
Hours. There are no 13-year-olds buried there that are named Mary.
No.
Can we say that?
I'm not sure
Like,
if there's
honestly-
any 13-year-olds there.
Well, there were a few people who were younger, but it was
So
like...
there was a 16-year-old
And
Mary.
once you start getting into the other halls, there were a few, but there was no one there that had those two things. Was a Mary, and also was 13.
Wait, so you said this guy just, I don't
Lied?
understand. He said
Made
that
up?
he said that there was a Mary that was 13 or there wasn't.
His wording is, I named her Mary because there's a tomb in the mausoleum, the west wing of the mausoleum. There's a tomb for a girl named Mary who died when she was 13.
We didn't see that.
Nothing.
We went up and down.
Nothing like that.
Especially
So
the
unless,
West Wing.
and of course, like I said, you hate to disparage the dead, but like, I mean, the evidence is right there, right? And you don't. The mausoleum doesn't seem like some place where you would inter someone, like uninter someone, like you would dig someone
Yeah,
up and
right.
put them somewhere else. It wasn't that kind of place. I
No,
mean, maybe,
they definitely came after they died. I think some of them, like you said, the cemetery was moved or something, but it wasn't like they took them out of there.
so I don't know if he was just trying to make that like,
Nice story.
you know, like
Yeah.
because we've
We
talked
all want
about
to tie up these ends.
yeah, we've talked
Yeah.
about multiple times
We
how
did. We
Mary is
searched
so accessible
Yeah.
as a name, and so like it's easy to make Marys, and you
Yeah.
know, Judy or you know,
Seraphina.
and Seraphina. Why not the ghost of Seraphina? There were plenty of Seraphinas there, but also the idea of like these common names that you can like put on,
Mary, yeah.
and they're all usually very Christian. Elizabeth and Julie, Julia, stuff like that. So we can say, I feel like we can say unequivocally, there is no Mary in the mausoleum sections,
That was
because there's
13.
different mausoleums, who was 13.
No.
Like there and
No, we know that there was a 16-year-old Mary and a lot of older.
and I would
Marys.
go on to say that there were no Marys there under the age of like 90. You
Except
know what I'm
for
saying?
the
Like
one.
except for the one. So we debated a lot on who Mary was because we were in the West Wing. There were two Marys right next to each other, like, you know, cattle quarter together. And you were obsessed with Mary 1, who had no date. She only had one date on her grave,
Right.
on her tomb. And so it was really tough to say, was that when she was born? Was that when she died? And you were really, really hard pressed, or you were really hard set on, like, this is Mary. This is the Mary that we're talking about.
This is the story that came to me.
I,
And
however,
why do things come to you? You know what I mean? Like,
no, I'm with you. Like, isn't that the
you
whole
don't
point
really
of...
know. But just like that guy said, there was a Mary. Like, I'm not saying it's fact, but this is the story that came to me when I was sitting there.
Yeah, and I think Dave has asked, wasn't the term tomb used to describe any type of interment? And I would agree with that, except for I also think when you're telling a story, when you're talking about a haunted legend, there is a connotation to the word tomb as opposed to the word grave, or as opposed to the word
Crypt?
You know what I'm saying? Like we even talked, I think, about
Yeah, we did the crypt.
the connotation of the word crypt, and so
Wait, is there
I think he
pictures of this?
intentionally used the word tomb to separate the mausoleum section
Yeah,
from
well,
the
that's what I
other
was gonna say.
parts
Do we
of
have
the
pictures
cemetery.
of what it looked like? Because if you haven't been to this mausoleum, like, it's really hard to comprehend what it was like. It was like a wall of squares with people's names on them. So it looked like huge tiles, which were actually where their coffins were. So it was like,
And that was weird for you, which it wasn't weird for me at all. I'm like, my grandparents are all buried like that.
but like that, I wouldn't call
Except for
those
one.
tombs. I would call that, I don't know, what would you call that? So
See,
maybe
when
that's
I
why you
think
said
of
tomb.
when I think of tomb, I think of a
Like a little-
non-underground burial. But usually, which is what separates it from this, when I just think of the word tomb, and this could be my Buffy the Vampire Slayer
Uh-huh.
action going on. Anyone recognize the shirt? would be one that was like in a mausoleum, but like a family mausoleum, and
Right.
would be sitting, like standing above ground,
Yes.
but not into the wall.
Yeah,
but
these
just like,
things were. It was like a cabinet. It was like a cabinet of.
right. And the only thing,
coffins.
separating the mausoleum from the rest of them, just talking about the wall ones, not the wall
of
burials,
coffins.
not the whole cemetery. There was I shouldn't say obviously, but there was a section that were traditional graves, but the majority of it were these
Coffin
wall
mold.
ones, and then
Yeah.
within those wall ones, and I've posted the social media on the social media. I've posted pictures of it. I haven't done like all of them yet, because I was waiting for this episode so I could tag the episode links in it. These were like the special ones.
Yes.
I became consumed with who Mary was.
That was the whole point. Little Mary.
To
is the
figure
title.
out who Little Mary was, but also to prove you wrong.
Yes. You.
That was the main thing. I wanted to make sure that.
He proved me wrong.
I wanted to make
still
sure
hasn't done it.
it's an entire episode of proving you wrong.
Yeah, and
If
it's
you're
still
not convinced that my Mary is
The
your
Mary.
Mary is the Mary by the end of this episode,
What?
I'll let you slap me. We'll slap.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
We'll get to slap
I have never slapped you. I wanted to until you were about to say it. I will slap you.
She's described as a young teenage girl, first of all, that has died of an illness. These are his words within there. In the West Wing. Now,
you're
it
taking
is
his
said that
words for what they are, even though
I'm just saying what the legend is according to Jenkins, according to Dr. Jenkins.
is there other sources?
She is said to be strongly content. No, I would say that this is the source. Then other
Okay.
people copy him. She is strongly content. She has a feeling of being strongly content. Which to me, strongly content, that's a little bit of an oxymoron. Being 13 years old and then kneeling. Then he says he named her Mary because there was a tomb that he found that said that. One person at least has seen her kneeling at the tombs. So I want you to imagine if you're in there and you're kneeling, you're looking at a specific tomb. Just
You're
keep
talking
that.
about the coffins on the wall now?
Yeah, I'm talking about it within the west wing of the mausoleum.
Okay.
She is said to comfort people.
Mhm.
When other people are grieving, which is maybe why she didn't contact us, because by the time we got back there the second time, we had those grilled cheeses, so we were way content,
Yeah.
right? So maybe she didn't
We were
feel.
trying to fake
'Cause
being
I went over-
sad, but
I went over all that audio,
I was
but I
feeling
didn't
really
get
happy
anything.
that day, and
I think it was a really beautiful place,
it was hard to pretend to be sad.
so then when I got home, I started doing research on my Mary, the Mary who I thought it was, and
I didn't do it.
I know, but I kind of researched your Mary as we were going, and we couldn't even find that she was dead. That maybe the reason why there's not a second date on there is because she's still alive, because she has real estate holdings, right? It's like it's owned by this person. So
It's in her name, at least.
I shouldn't say I discovered who it was, because the name is right there. I mean, it's obvious who it is because her tomb is right there. So it's not like you fudge around the facts a little bit, but it makes sense that it's this other Mary. And then I started to research her.
Right?
The more details you hear of the story, the more the ghost makes sense.
Okay.
Which is why I felt like it was an episode in and of itself to revisit the real story of Sad Little Mary. But in the back of my head, and I posted this question out there and people responded to it, so I'd love to hear your view on it. Is it an insult to the living to take this story? Now it's okay if it's a guy who died 100 years ago or 30 years ago or a theoretical person. Let's face it. We're legend trippers, and we bring out these people and we say this might be the person, stuff like that. But they're dead, and they're long dead, and they're not necessarily still part of our living world,
Right.
right? And
Their immediate family is
right, we're talking about Ma Barker, right? And in a few episodes, and it's like Ma Barker is dead. She's a historical figure. We can talk about the hauntings
They're all
of Ma
black and
Barker,
white
right? It's
photos.
right, you know.
Yeah.
As opposed to someone whose father might still live in the area, whose father, as I was discovering more, has suffered incredible grief and tragedy. Do you talk about it? Do you make this real life person who hasn't been gone that long? I mean, 1989. Is it immoral or unethical to talk about her?
Now, you've struggled with this before.
I have. When we were going to do the suicide
Yeah.
at Broward County Community College.
And I understand that there's still family, and that's part of it. But why do you think it's such a topic for you? Besides the fact
I'm
that
with
the
you.
family, is there another reason?
Because I think back to the words of Pete Townsend. Do you know who Pete Townsend is?
Yeah.
Who's Pete Townsend? You know,
Singer.
he's the guitarist for the Who also sings. So I'll give you that.
Okay.
But he was talking in an interview, and they were asking him about some of the famous people who he was friends with, and he kind of flipped out, which he had a tendency to do. He flipped out on the interviewer, and he's like,
Because they had passed away.
yeah, and he was like, but the way that they were asking the questions, it was like as if they weren't real people.
Right.
And
But
he's
we're not
like,
journalists.
he's like, they might be, and he used a line, and I won't say the exact line because but he said, they might be your icons, but they were my effing friends.
Okay.
And I kind of feel like if Ella passed, if Ella died, if Devin died, God heaven forbid, and then and there was a legend, and then people started attaching my kids, who I love, to that legend, I might be offended by that. That might be.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say
Too much.
We're not journalists, so the way that we approach things is so different. Like, we're not looking for like the cover story, the big, like saying the meanest thing to get attention.
That's
like,
interesting that you would say journalist, and then that was your definition of journalist.
Well,
But I'm not insulting. I'm just saying that's the connotation we now have for journalism, right?
right. But if
I'm not trying to
anyone respects the dead, it's us.
And
we honor and respect the crap out of dead people. So we don't have, and I know it's not always just about intention, but I think it would be okay.
I came down on the side of okay, and actually,
Yeah,
and then
okay. I didn't say great. I said
and then
okay.
and then I was gonna do the whole episode, but not mention her name, and say like, I'm giving you all the information. If you want to go find out her real name,
Do you ever think
can
about
do
like
it.
asking permission?
I tried with this one. I tried to track down the father via his business. And then I thought two things. One, it's out there. Like, her name attached to this legend, I was able to find a reference to it we didn't find before we went.
Mm-hmm.
That says that this girl is this ghost.
Okay, you know what I just...
As the Ouija board falls.
Okay. You know what I just thought about?
What?
When we went to the inn.
No.
The inn.
Oh, Lillian Place?
Yeah, when we went to
Yeah.
Lillian Place, and she had was it family? The
Yeah.
grandmother? Was that someone related to her?
No, they were caretakers, but they were strongly.
They didn't want us to put
They wanted to make
bad...
sure that what we said was good, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that's what I mean. Like, I think if we were saying something bad, it would be awful. But we love and honor these people.
And then that was the
their
second part of it.
story.
It's out there. First of all, it's out
Right.
there, and second of all is, I would think that other than the silliness that we've had at the beginning of this episode, the way that I'm going to describe the life of Mary and its connection to the ghost, I think honors her.
Yeah, you're so respectful.
And so I think that the parents maybe would not have
But you said you might.
an objection. Well, I meant if it was me telling the story. If it was a story of my kid.
Right.
Right. So I think that the way that we're doing it is
But
not
you know
like...
what? Just the fact that we're
and also-
considering all this.
Right, and also the fact that the ghost is not some creepy, scary ghost, that it's a comforting ghost, which I think when we look at her life, we're actually going to see a lot of that. So, her name is Mary Davis. She passed away in 1989 at the age of 15. So, and that name was given in the South Florida Sentinel, October 22nd, 2018, so not that long ago. Carrie Barnett wrote the article. She says it. She says it in a very offhanded way. She's talking about all the other ghosts, and she also goes, "Oh, by the way, there's also this ghost, and it's this woman."
What was
right?
this article about?
A ghost tour that goes through Boca Raton and stops at the cemetery.
Okay.
Mary Davis is the name of the 15-year-old girl. So we were consumed with a 13-year-old girl. 15, is it a big difference? Well, I think when we get,
looks 13.
I think when we get into this story, we'll kind of see. I wouldn't say so. I'm going to show you this really quickly. You guys can't see it, but you can see it on our social media later. That's her right before she passed away.
Yeah, she doesn't look 13.
She doesn't look 13. And this is her. This is her probably a year before. This is the picture that I showed you earlier. And I'm assuming that this is her twin brother and this is her younger brother right here. So this is Alex, and this little one is James. I don't know. We'll get to that in a moment.
Okay.
So we have it. Like you would not mistake her for a 13-year-old.
No. She looks older than 15.
I would say that might be the world that she, or the life that she had. As we'll see. So a lot of this comes from Jenkins' book, but everything I'm going to say now either comes from news articles or from another book called From Tragedy to Triumph: The Father's Story of the Loss of Three Kids and the Faith to Overcome by Alex Davis. This is Mary's dad. Mary's dad, they had 4 kids, they lost 3 of them.
Unimaginable. Including,
as we know, her twin brother, who is buried right next to her, who died in 2010. So, Mary is the first to die, but she's obviously the last one we're going to cover. I want us to imagine the father, Alex's, who writes very eloquently, and he obviously, this book, I don't know how many pages it would actually be. I read it on Google Books, and I think I read pretty much the whole thing, and it's not very long.
Well, what is his real job?
He is a contractor.
Yeah. So he did this for...
But he also writes little ebooks. There was one in there about guitar playing, and another about like how to do your stuff.
Nice. How to do your stuff.
So James, how to do like general contracting type stuff.
Oh, good.
James is the first or is the second to pass away, and he is the third child. So he is the second boy born, the third child, and he was quiet and kind of unassuming.
James is the twin?
Nope, James is not the twin.
He's the younger brother.
Right.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
And how did he pass away?
I'm not even close to there yet.
Okay.
When he was 17, a friend came back from a friend that would sound like who was already in college or who had moved away, came back. They went out, they got into a car accident. He survived. They both survived. He survived, but he was in an incredible amount of pain. Do you know where the story's going from there? Like, what?
He got addicted.
He got addicted to painkillers. And he ended up dying in 2005. He is not buried there.
Okay.
So that's an interesting part of the story because Alex is buried there, but James, who died first, is not buried there. So we don't know whether Mary was originally placed in this cemetery.
Yeah, but that's her twin.
No, I'm with you. And that's going to become important because let's talk about Alex for a little bit.
Okay.
Alex was the exact opposite of his brother.
Alex is the twin.
Alex is the twin. He was an extrovert. He was like, everyone called him Alley Boy, and he just had this like, kind of like hometown, you know what I'm saying? Like he was involved in everything. He was involved in sports and all this stuff like that. And he was just like an explosion of power and energy.
Even after his sister passed away?
Nope. Once his sister got sick, he became withdrawn and depressed, right? So, as we're going to see, Mary was sick for a few years. Alex kind of went downhill. He never celebrated his own birthday after that. He was like, if my sister's not here to celebrate, I'm not going to celebrate it. So he never celebrated his own birthday. He got into drugs and he actually overdosed a few times over the course of his life.
Okay.
But then it looks like he turned his life around. He became a father. In all of the reading, I couldn't tell whether he was married or not, but it seemed like he wasn't because it seemed like he was doing things in Virginia, and then it said he came down to Florida.
Okay.
We're going to talk about Mary, and Mary's tragic. We both know people who have struggled with addiction. We know what a game changer recovery is, and how it gives a certain amount of clarity to what's important and what is, and it focuses a lot of people.
Well, especially if you've had like an overdose, like a near-death experience.
And he had several, so
Right.
it wasn't he had refound his faith. He was in Virginia, so I got the impression he was living in Virginia, because the family seemed like went back and forth, or at least spent a lot of time in Virginia. He was rushed to the hospital after he was eating, I think at a restaurant, was eating, and he choked on a chicken bone. The blockage was so bad that they had to surgically remove the chicken bone from his throat. So I want you to imagine two things right now. One, this guy turns his life around. He's on the straight and narrow. He's trying to be a good dad. He even started like his own business.
He lost his twin sister. He overdosed. He's recovering. And
he chokes on a chicken bone. To the point that like they had to go in, and there was so much of a loss of oxygen to his brain, he never fully recovered. And there's this story in there in Alex's book, in the Tragedy of Triumph book, that talks about how he didn't even respond. Like he was not responsive, going in and out of a coma. And the only time they ever saw him respond was once when his little baby girl came in and like touched his face and was kissing him, and he opened his eyes. And that was like the only time during this time. Now you don't know whether that's father, like, you know what I'm saying, for the retelling of the book or whatever, but now imagine his dad. This is the third kid of his. I think the only people who had it worse than this was the Lots, right? Who had, like, they just felt like they were cursed. And it's important to remember that through all of this, they kept their faith. I'm not really sure. I don't think we've ever really talked about, like, where we think about God and what that serves in our life.
Right.
But I gather that neither of us are, there's maybe a spiritual connection to things, but neither of us are overly, like, faithful.
Right.
And praying and
Right.
And I definitely am not one of those people that says, like, God has a plan for us and this happened for a reason. I actually can't stand when people say that.
He does not like that. I don't say it happens for a reason. I say you can learn from everything.
No, you say it happens for a reason.
Yeah, but then I
too,
changed it to anything that you go through, you can, like, find
You
good
can
in
find,
it.
but it's not there intentionally.
No, and I changed my mind.
You changed your mind. You don't think that anymore?
I don't think everything happens for a reason. I think everything happens and you can learn from it or see, like, the positive or something from it.
Okay,
gain
so
something from it.
You just got kind of weak.
I got kind of weak?
Yeah, that's kind of like. Anyway, I don't take attention away from Mary.
Okay.
But Mary was the first to go. Mary was like the first one of these dominoes to fall. And it would seem that, the father directly relates the drug addiction and the depression of Alex to Mary dying. And you would imagine that she was sick for 3.5 years.
Okay.
3.5 years of absolute craziness, Mary was 12 when she was diagnosed. And she was, what happened was she originally went in, she was having headaches, and she went into the eye doctor of all people, so they thought there was something wrong with her prescription. And the eye doctor noticed something weird and odd, and then kind of brought it to the attention of the parent. And then all of a sudden they started running tests, and ended up she had a brain tumor. The father describes her as like having this thick curly brown hair and these big brown eyes. She was a straight A student. She was an athlete. One of the things I got from it was he said she cheerleaded at all of the games that I coached. So what I imagined was, and this is kind of really heartbreaking to me, what I imagined is that like Alex is playing the sport and the dad's coaching and she's cheering on the side, like you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
which is just devastating to me. I guess when she was really little, she was overweight. And you can kind of see that fullness to her face of like, you know, she probably, struggled with that kind of thing. But she hated bullies. Like, she had been kind of picked on because of her weight when she was young. And so she was like uber, like anti-bullying, like stood up for the little guy, all that stuff like that. Keep in mind, all this is coming from the father's book. And just had a crazy strong faith. Like through everything we're going to talk about.
The whole family did.
The whole family really did. And I also get the feeling that a lot of when things were straight, it was like they've gone away from God and they need to come back to God and that'll help.
Where's the mom?
Not much mention of the mom. And as a matter of fact, as I was reading more things, I started to be like, I don't think they're together. Again, would you be able to do that? Would you be able to? I mean, you hear about that all the time when tragedy strikes. Couples break up because you can't get over this. And this was not a sudden death. This was 3.5 years of doctor's appointments, of going back and forth between different hospitals. Would you be able, I don't know, I think that would be a really tough strain on a marriage. Now imagine going through it 3 times.
Yeah, it would definitely be a tough strain, but if you have so much faith, that would help you, I think.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
It's
if
weird
you all
that
have
it's
faith
not even
together.
Mentioned.
Yeah, he doesn't,
Like
and maybe
sentence.
it's now me being me, I got I consumed the tragedy part of the story and didn't really go into and then God lifted me out of this or helped me through all of this part of the book. So maybe the wife is more mentioned in the recovery, the road to recovery, or the road to although it seems like he never really lost it.
Yeah, I would think like a family though, it would say like my wife and I.
Yeah, I mean she's mentioned all throughout all these stories, but it's never like she's never really front and center. So maybe because face it,
we don't know.
You're right. Because face it, we're inventing all this shit around it. But it's like if he's taking her from this place to that place, all these hospitals, who's watching the other 3 kids? It's probably her. Although it does seem that he got the news of all of these when he was away from town. So I got the idea that he often was like out of town, or it just was crazy coincidence. Virginia, Delaware, places like that. One was Texas, I think. We spent a lot of time in episode 111 talking about at what age do you manifest, right? And even as I was going through and editing that, I'm like, wow, we spent a lot of time talking about this. If she was sick for 3.5 years,
so by manifesting,
it might place her
what
where
does she
would
look
you
like if she comes
back?
if
we decide to come back, I don't think it would be crazy that she would come back as a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
is there
at
any
the
other
moment,
stories of this stuff?
I think, well,
like you're the expert. Like, have you heard of people coming back at a different age than when
I've heard stories of people coming back at different ages, right? What is interesting though is and this gets into a little more research I was doing about autism and poltergeist and the connections between those things. But this idea that, sure, her development maybe, not spiritual because it seems like she continues on, but like was maybe stopped at 12, And I think it's a lot easier to say a 12-year-old is a 13-year-old.
We just said she doesn't look like she's 12 or 13.
Because no one's described what the ghost physically looks like.
No, you just said her development
but
we saw the picture of her.
Right, but that's not necessarily the ghost that people are seeing because we have no physical description.
But
She's
her
described
development
as being
didn't
younger.
stop because we've seen her actual picture.
I'm saying like as in her spectral form, she might be stuck at that moment where she first got the brain tumor.
Okay.
Or first discovered she had the brain tumor. So 12-year-old to 13-year-old would not be as big of a leap as a 15-year-old to a...
Is there other stories like this?
Other stories of an older person coming back as a child?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, I would say.
Think so?
No, I would say that there are. Like,
you're the research expert. Come on.
Okay, first of all, don't be so snooty about it. But no, I think that there's like, yeah, I mean, people
So
aren't
you
always
don't know, just say, "I
necessarily.
don't know."
No, I'm because I'm trying to separate folklore from like movies that I've seen where the ghost is younger. Like even in the what do you call it, the Woman in White, which we have an episode all about the Woman in White. There's a she manifests as a younger person than she was when she died.
Okay.
And there's also
So there's one.
there's also examples of people who suffer, and I'm specifically thinking of there's a psychic that I talk about often on the show, Jackie Barrett, who was doing a case where she encountered the 12-year-old or the 9-year-old. It was really young, 9-year-old maybe, 9-year-old ghost of the man who was currently owning the house.
Say that again.
Okay, he was owning the house. He owned the house.
Okay, he's alive.
He was an adult. Yep, he was
Okay.
an adult. Owned the house. Was
And
alive.
somebody came back as
And he
him?
was experiencing a haunting. And when she went and looked into it, she discovered that the ghost was him as a 9-year-old in the basement who had separated himself because of abuse.
Wow. All right, I believe it now.
So he was being abused.
Uh-huh.
He separated himself somehow.
That definitely happens.
And that the ghost of him as a 9-year-old or as a child
so
was
you're saying,
and was helped by there was something dark
yeah.
in the basement who was continuously torturing
All right, I
him.
think she totally could have came back as 12.
Okay. Yeah, well that convinced you? That's
Yes.
what convinced you? Okay.
Yes.
But you know what? We don't know.
We don't
but
know,
I think
yeah.
going
It's all
like
speculation.
it's at least in our mind for that part.
Okay.
It said that this girl, after she got sick, she went from hospital to hospital. She had multiple operations. The initial operation removed most of the tumor, but didn't get all of it. And so they knew, like, there's a line in the book about we knew we now had years instead of days with her. So they knew that the prognosis was not good for her to survive this. She ministered to the doctors and the nurses. Like, she actually started this little ministry and would talk about God and faith and all these things like that. And the community totally went and embraced her. See all these windows I have open right here?
Yeah.
Those are all newspaper articles about some event that was being sponsored in her name to raise money for the family. I'm just going to tell you a few of these things. And I wish the father had been specific about some of this, but he wasn't. They brought in the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Some famous person was supposed to come into the hospital, and I guess he came into because a whole bunch of people wanted it and her, and this famous comedian who had a movie that was out that was funny. So I don't know what comedian in 1987, 88 was so popular.
Eddie Murphy?
I thought the same thing, dude. That's so funny, dude. I was like, I'm like, maybe it was Eddie Murphy. I would love to know who it was. I could not find, and he
We're not putting down
he
Eddie
very
Murphy.
specifically doesn't mention any of those things. No, what it says is actually the exact opposite, that he was so overwhelmed he couldn't go in. I don't know if that's, once again, artistic license to just say the dude was a douche. But they ended up taking a trip to London instead. And so he and his daughter were able to go to London and experience that. Like the Parker Playhouse in Fort Lauderdale did a benefit for. There was another one. This place called the Wild Hare had a cut-a-thon, where for these like 8 hours, cut your hair right in October. There was a wing dinner from the Ladies Auxiliary of Veterans of Foreign War. There was a benefit show, like concerts, all these things that were doing it. And then they said,
it's pretty good for the 80s.
I mean, it's crazy.
Without
like
social media. And
right. She was in line for this experimental treatment.
Okay.
I'm.
Do we know what disease she had, or does it matter, or you don't know, or?
She had a brain tumor. So the brain tumor developed. She goes to this children's hospital. I think this is the hospital in Philadelphia. I think it is. Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. And they say the tumor is too big. You can't have this experimental thing because your brain's too big. The tumor is too big. She leaves the hospital, and on the way out of the hospital, she strokes out.
What?
Right? And so she's just there for an appointment to check this out. I'm not even sure if she was a regular person in the hospital. They have to rush her back in. They have to take parts of this out. Now, keep in mind, throughout all this, I think this brain tumor is because you're asking what disease, is part of cancer, right? Because they're constantly talking about chemotherapy. And I'm not sure if chemotherapy is also, I don't know if you would know this, chemotherapy is also used to just reduce tumors, without, and if they're not cancerous. I don't know. But she did have chemo through all this, as you can tell from her hair and stuff like that in the one picture. She strokes out of going out of the hospital. And the way that I read the series of events, they rush her into the hospital. They have to remove the tumor, parts of every part of the tumor they can get to. And that makes it small enough to do the experiment.
Oh, okay.
Right? I mean, that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
The experiment costs $250,000. So if you're talking about all the other stresses upon this, imagine the financial strain of that. So the experimental is called a bone marrow rescue.
Okay.
And so what I just imagine the pain and the anguish of all of this. What they do is they harvest all of the marrow out of your bone, freeze it, hit you up with chemotherapy, and then put all the marrow, now filtered, back into your body. It was experimental. They didn't know it was going. I mean, right?
Can you use it now still?
I wasn't able to find bone marrow rescue. I should maybe look that up to find, but I wasn't. I never found whether this had been and this seemed to happen on September 1st, 1988. She recovers.
Okay.
She recovers to the point that everyone is saying she'll be home and out of the hospital by Christmas. April 15th, the tumor bursts, bleeds into her brain, and she finally passes away. So, what I gathered from that story was the spirit of this girl, who really never got to be a teenager. We say she died when she was 15, but really she kind of stopped to a large degree at 12. But every single one of these articles that I have, every single thing I was able to find, and this isn't even all of them that are out there, talked about her caring. Talked about how it always went outward with her, right? In other words, there's this one story of a congressman, I think it is, or a senator from Delaware, who the father met in line and at a coffee shop or whatever. He brought him. The guy was like, "I want to go visit your daughter. She sounds amazing." He went up there. The father had to go do something. Came back, and 4 hours later, and she was spiritually counseling this guy. That her thing.
She had this huge purpose.
Was, and keep in mind, all the stuff I'm talking about was not preparation for the ghost book. It was just talking about her life. All of that stuff in life mirrors what this ghost is said to do.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's okay, the ghost comforts people. It would seem that if this woman, this young lady, if she were alive, would be doing this exact same thing. That kneeling, once again, I'm piecing things together from when books were published and stuff like that. And when Jenkins talks about it, this kneeling thing happened in 2010, which is when her brother died. Her brother Alex died.
Okay.
I can only imagine that kneeling at the tomb, because it's only described that one time, would her literally be kneeling in front of Alex's tomb.
For him. Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's to read it, whether it's to, to comfort him somehow. We don't know how these things work, but we would imagine if you don't get ultimate enlightenment, then it might be really weird to all of a sudden there's another name on the tomb.
Right.
And to be reading it, and to be reading that her brother is there, you know.
Right, and they have this twin connection.
And that twin connection, I don't think any of us who's not a twin can talk about it with any kind of sensibility, but you know it exists, and, and it's almost like if you don't believe in certain things, you still kind of believe in the twin thing.
Right.
So I think that it's this woman, this young lady, is comforting from beyond the way that she comforted in life, and that her spiritual, her ghostly life is just a continuation of what she did when she was. It's a mirror, right? It's the same thing she was doing. And so, in addition to the age and stuff like that, to me, that tells me that she is the Mary that is talked about in the story.
The Mary alive and the Mary spirit is the same.
The same thing.
Same.
It's the same thing. I mean, you know, I wish now we could go and talk to her.
Now that we.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with. I know it sounds weird. I have a new job. I'm good with 15-year-old girls.
Sounds totally weird.
I know it does, but like that's my age group, right? Like freshmen and stuff like that. Like that's
a teacher.
That's it, right? Everyone, if you're listening, you probably know I'm a teacher.
I'm good with 15-year-old girls. You have a daughter.
My daughter's not 15. Shut up.
No,
she'll never be 15. But
13.
the idea of like I feel like if we knew that now going in.
Well, and it's like we talked about it, like we wanted to know it.
I mean, we read a kid's book. And even as we were reading it, I was kind of like, yeah, but you know what? This is kind of like one of those cool picture books. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, I can read, I know every year I read The Giving Tree and Where the Wild Things Are to my class, and they all love it.
Well, in high school graduation, everyone gets,
oh, the places you'll go.
Right,
I mean, I don't know. And I think that yours was creepy and off-center enough that it was like, it was quirky. It was quirky, cool, like in that cool emo-y, as my daughter would say, emo way, that like.
Well, and you said the thing about her hair, but I think she did her hair like that, more of like a style.
You think so?
That was just what I assumed when I looked at the picture. She has like shaved under her hair.
You don't think that that's like coming out of chemo?
Like when I first looked at it, I just thought it was like, I kind of want to shave my hair like that sometimes. Like it looks really cute. I'm sure it has something to do with the chemo, but like.
Do you know what that looks like to me? A dark-haired version of Billie Jean.
Yeah,
you know,
but it
like
looks. She definitely likes the book already.
Right is right. You know.
Well, when you said emo, like it made me think of like.
Yeah, and this once again we'll post these pictures on social media.
In the 80s?
It was all Well, you know, now everyone will be like, yeah, I did Kate Bush. But like this right here, this is incredibly. Other than the fact that they're getting along, is incredibly. My ex-wife, and I know that doesn't look like what you would think my ex-wife looked like.
Well, that's what she looked like in the 80s.
And then this looks like her brother. Like it's crazy similar to their physical dynamic.
I can kind of understand why you have such a thought about talking about people that have passed away recently. You seem like a lot more connected. Maybe because you can research it more and like you have more details and. You have a dog, you know, like you're like so connected to it.
So
more so than other.
If we think of what we do here, if I think of what we do here, we're legend trippers. It's about a legend. It's about a story
is there a definition
that has had.
Has to be 100 years old?
No, but I think a layer and a layer and a layer. Like there's been really,
so
and although you see,
it's kind of like your bathroom. There's not enough layers.
Although I don't even know what that meant. Although what you see is here is like 30. What is this? 30 years? Like
yeah, we were both alive.
I graduated from. I graduated from. You know, I started high school in 1988, right? But even within that time,
I was way younger.
Even within that time, there's been enough time that it's gone by that the story has shifted a little bit. But it's still you're talking. You know, if you're talking about an older legend, you're talking about.
No, I get
people
it.
who,
I know what you're saying, but like, I get it. I can feel it in you.
What we study is the way that those stories shift, right? Because the way those stories shift is what says about the people who tell it.
A lot yet.
And it's people who are still alive, right? Like in theory, the fourth child is still alive, right?
What do you mean in theory?
Well, I wasn't able to find any research on her.
Okay.
Yeah. Like. it makes it different. It makes it more real. You know, I mean, even when we were at Fort DeSoto and we were communicating, and it seemed that we were actually talking to a mother who was grieving. It was still a mother who was grieving from shit that happened 100 years ago, and it was. This is. If you think about, we didn't see her, we didn't feel her, we didn't get her on tape or anything like that, but this is someone we would be friends with.
Right.
Who?
Wait, what year was she born?
Well, so take 1998 and subtract. Was it 98 or 88?
88.
I think it's
Or 89 was.
89 was when
15.
she passed away.
Yeah.
So she would have been born
15.
75, 74, 74. 74, 75, depending on.
So she's your age.
She's she would have been like my friend, you know?
Yeah.
She would have been, you know, the girl that you looked up to,
Yeah.
right? Like
She knows Pearl Jam songs.
she probably, well, she doesn't, but she would have, you know? Like, that to me makes it real, which is not legend.
Right.
So even though she's become a legend, it makes it more intense because it's right there.
And it's very important to respect.
Someone
Yeah.
listening to this show right now could have gone to elementary school with her. You know? And so that is that fine line of, are we honoring her? And I feel like we have.
Yeah,
We've honored her, and we've talked nothing about, we've talked about nothing but
There is
how
nothing but good.
she
There is
reflected
nothing
faith,
bad,
she
yeah.
reflected this like sincerity, but that's why it's real to me, you know, because it is real.
It is real.
If you're talking about, there's a woman on a road and no one knows who she is,
Yeah.
it might be this person, it might be this person, it's theoretical,
So
right?
I
It's
don't
folklore, it's theoretical.
So I don't
Whereas
get to slap
this, I don't know, like, you tell me, like, do you feel I've
It
convinced
totally,
you?
No, you have convinced me. She's totally the Mary. But can I say one thing about my Mary?
That she's still alive? Go ahead.
No,
Other than that,
No. Okay, if she's alive or not alive, the story that I got is still true.
there you go.
What
I mean,
said about her.
what do I say at every lecture that I give? We can debate whether ghosts are real or not, but a ghost story is always true because someone believes it. So you believe that story that you told?
No, like I said, if she's alive or not alive, the stuff that I said about her is true.
Explain.
feel it.
Explain what you mean. Just
Okay,
do you
okay.
feel it?
Like I got this story about how she has like a young spirit and like her husband or family so honors her and like she just dances around and is this like free, like I could feel it.
Yeah.
Like I said, if she's alive or not alive, I still think I picked up on.
An energy, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that doesn't
So-
necessarily seem like Mary Davis. Is that same kind of, whereas she was a straight A student and she was glowing and she was energetic.
Right, so
It doesn't
maybe
seem
my
like
Mary
it's the.
wasn't the ghost that we were researching, but I still picked
You
up
still
on
think.
her, like who she is.
That's interesting. If you have a tomb ahead of time, do you astral project to that tomb? Like if you have a burial site that you're going to be.
I feel like I picked up on her.
These are questions for a different night. Because tonight, I feel like it's about time for us to say goodnight.
Yes. No slapping.
So, make sure that you are listening. If you are listening, this is the first time you ever listened to the show. We're not normally
Welcome.
this, like, touchy-feely
Sad,
and stuff like that. Oh, no, I try to go with the sad people and then uplift with Mary's actual life. Did I accomplish that? Or do you feel it was all sad and depressing?
No, it just is real.
It's real, right?
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. No, it was real and too real, right? So
let's go back to the 100-year-old legends.
I know. Let's go back to like dunk on the grave
the
5
wall.
times.
Yeah. The witch wall.
If this was your first episode, please go back to the archives, listen to the other ones, especially listen to 111 and 109, where we cover the actual legend in more detail, as well as the cemetery. We have almost 200 episodes in one form or another on there. You can follow us on social media. On Instagram, we are at Spooky Tripping. On Facebook, we are at I should say facebook.com/trippingonlegends. You can go to the website, which is trippingonlegends.com. And Tripping on Legends is also the TikTok. Are you going to do some TikTok videos for us?
I have to download it first.
Okay. Or you can just let me film you.
Okay.
Okay. So, I feel like this is a story that is now done. Like, I feel like we've done every aspect of this cemetery that we can possibly do. I'm officially going to put the folder in the done pile after I write up a travel log about it. And I'm only going to pull it out if we happen to do a book or something that focuses on that kind of area. Which I guess we will, because it fits into the whistling past the cemetery. Because you have a conversation with her. Well, you have a conversation with her. She comes out to grieve you. So I guess, maybe not. Anyway, I am Christopher Balzano.
I'm Deanna Mohern.
And here's hoping that all of your trips
are legendary.
Thank you very much for coming out.